If you or a loved one is undergoing chemotherapy or a bone marrow transplant, this video is for you. I'm Niko. I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma almost 5 years ago. And since then, I've undergone many rounds of chemotherapy, and it all culminated in a bone marrow transplant, which happened 3 weeks ago. I'm compelled to make a video sharing my experience, but also sharing tools that aren't recommended by doctors, that they won't talk about, that really helped me in my journey. I'm not a medical professional, but in a lot of ways, what I have to say about chemotherapy and a bone marrow transplant is more valid. A lot of doctors and nurses, they don't actually have the experience of having chemotherapy put into their bodies, of undergoing a bone marrow transplant and all that it entails. They know it logically, but in terms of knowing it experientially, I have a lot to say that I think could be valuable, particularly if you're the one undergoing the treatment yourself. After 4.5 years of treatment, there is a lot to say about my experience, but I will try to keep it concise. And I'll also try to not make broad statements. I'll try to keep it about my experience, and hopefully you can extrapolate that which is useful into what you're undergoing yourself. It is tough, and I'm sorry that you have to face this journey. It is a lonely journey in terms of only you will truly feel how you feel, and your support system, no matter how loving they are, there will be parts of this that they simply can't understand, and you don't want them to understand because it's uncomfortable. It also seems to be worthwhile. And dare I say it, there's even points within the journey, within the suffering, that validate the experience besides prolonging your life. I did have a specific type of cancer, a blood cancer, so your experience may be very different, and I want to respect that by sharing just my experience, and hopefully in doing so, you can extrapolate something that'll help you in your experience. I'm going to share some tools that I used to regulate my nervous system and to bring a sense of comfort to me, particularly while undergoing chemotherapy and even in the weeks that followed, which can be tough because they're kind of when your body starts to recover and recuperate from the treatment. If you've undergone chemotherapy, and please feel free to share anything about your experience in the comments, particularly if you think it'll help those that have yet to go through the process or that are about to start the process of chemotherapy. One thing about chemotherapy is that might be different from other trying times in your life is the persistence of the discomfort. Nothing what I'm trying to share is to scare you. You can make it through the process, and you can reclaim your health. And overall, I want this to be a message of optimism and to help you in your journey to see the other side. And to do that, we have to kind of wade through the muck. But the persistence of the nausea, of the tiredness, kind of thing that can wear on your mental state, maintaining your mental space is a lot of what these tools that I'm going to share is to help you do. One of the best practices that I used during the chemotherapy, during many parts of the chemotherapy, are breathing techniques. I specifically used the Wim Hof breathing technique. What I liked about that is there's videos online, and it's like 11 to 15 minute videos. There's many of them. If you search Wim Hof on YouTube, you'll see a beginner's breathing tutorial. I think it has like 100 million views. And I certainly accounted for a couple hundred of those. The anxiety of going into treatment is real, particularly if it's your first treatment, not knowing what to expect, not knowing how it's going to feel like. So ways that you can kind of reclaim the present moment. That's what a lot of these tools do for me. The breathing technique was a big part of my morning routine, particularly for the mornings leading up to chemotherapy. And there's so many resources that are free on YouTube that you can go and you find a video that you like. Getting myself to sit down and start the breathing techniques sometimes is a challenge. Of course, it's nothing in comparison to the treatment. but it does seem to be well worth it in terms of setting my mindset and regulating my nervous system leading up to treatment. There are some other benefits like temperature regulation, and there's even some immune system benefits that are currently being studied by doing these breathing techniques. Anything you can do to cultivate your own personal health, anything you can do to bring autonomy to yourself. A big part about undergoing treatment is kind of feeling helpless. There's not really an interactive part to the treatment besides dealing with the effects of it. You are just sitting there kind of receiving IVs. So anything that can be proactive, it does seem to cultivate a good mindset. But Wim Hof breathing or any breathing techniques, particularly that includes a retention breath on the exhale and a retention breath on the inhale, is shown to regulate your nervous system and to help boost your immune system. Next three tools, they actually do have a small cost to them. And in no way am I sponsored by any of these. And I'm going to try to hide the brands as much as possible because that's not important. Particularly if you have to do any time in the hospital. If you have to do inpatient treatment, there's not a ton of respect for your sleep, ironically. So things like lights, things like sounds, they kind of go on throughout the entirety of the night. I think sleep is so important. I think it's very backwards. I'm trying not to get too critical of the healthcare system and the hospital system, although I do have my gripes. Sleep's felt so important for me as part of recovering, particularly from the treatment, and it didn't seem to be a priority of the staff. They are more prioritized with getting your blood pressure at 3 in the morning and at 6 in the morning than they are of just letting you sleep. So to kind of combat that, these next few things, an eye mask, very simple. I think there's like $5. I got a silk one. I didn't like eye masks. I didn't like the pressure on my eyes. It kind of created this claustrophobic type of feeling at first, but now I've come to really like them. Limiting the amount of light really does help me get a deeper sleep. And in treatment, when there's like fluorescent hospital lights over you, this thing comes in clutch. So all for the same reasons. Earplugs. They are earplugs, and these wax ones really, really do a good job at forming to your ear, and they do keep a lot of the sound out, particularly more than the foam ones. You can only use these about 10 times, maybe less, depending on how clean you keep them, but super worthwhile. And then this one's really specific to chemotherapy. Something that can happen when you're undergoing chemotherapy is mouth sores due to the dryness and how the chemo can affect the fast dividing cells in your body, particularly the ones in your mouth, skin, nails, things like this, hair. I didn't have any mouth sores the entire time of my bone marrow transplant. And like I said, I've undergone 8 different types of chemotherapy over the course of years. I've done my fair share, is all I'm trying to convey. And mouth sores were something I was peripherally worried about. It wasn't a primary concern of mine, but it's just something that it can make uncomfortable situation more uncomfortable, and it can be difficult to eat at times. So a mouth sore can certainly make that even more difficult. But the next thing I want to share is mouth tape. Sleeping, if you sleep with your mouth open, it dries your mouth out significantly. And the sores, they produce more when your mouth is dry, when you don't have saliva lubricating your mouth. Like the sleep masks, not super comfortable. There is like a learning curve or whatever, but actually super worth it. I'm trying to hide the brand because I don't want to be brand specific, but there are many types of mouth tape. This one works pretty well. Before I lost all my hair and I had a beard, I had to make sure to put it on pretty, I had to like seal my lips and kind of really work it to stay on, but it does a pretty good job staying on. And I really, really do recommend mouth tape for maintaining the moisture in your mouth, which will really help mouth sores. A little criticism about the hospital system. They really just want to give you any medication they can. And there's treatment. There's the medicine that actually actively works against the disease that that you're facing. But the prophylactic medications, the medications to prevent possible things from happening, they're pill leading. And unfortunately, I think it's due to a billing. I think it's due to kind of collecting as much possible billable events to you as a patient. It's things they can bill the insurance companies. Any problem, concern that you have will be met with at first with some sort of pill, some sort of ointment first. And things like this that I'm showing you today will almost never be regarded because it seems, again, it seems to be that there's no way to make money off of these things. Although, again, not trying to get into the medical system, just kind of trying to just offering advice of low cost ways to manage your own symptoms without having to put another pill down your hatch or another mouthwash or another cream. They will give you mouthwashes, they will give you pills, they'll give you tablets, they will give you as much as they can. And the quantity they'll give you is a lot. So the eye mask, the earplugs, the mouth tape, these are ways to kind of like reclaim your rest and to manage mouth sores without having to do uh, another chemical basically in your body. Essential oils. Some hospitals are offering essential oils because you're going to be uncomfortable. Um, there's almost a heightening of the senses, smell, light, sound. These are why I recommend the eye mask and the earplugs as well, because even if you're going through treatment, sometimes the noises are quite jarring. So managing my soundscape, managing my lightscape, it all did seem to help at various points. Essential oils is another way of doing this. None of these tools are going to take away the everything. The breathing, the essential oils, they can help at various times, but the path can be and it will be arduous. A lot of times medical professionals, they won't tell you, they want to keep they want to keep you positive, and that's good. Cultivating a positive mindset is good, and I'm not criticizing doctors and nurses for this at all, but they also don't know what the experience is like. They'll tell you something like a bone marrow transplant, it feels like a bad flu. I can assure you that my personal experience was unlike any flu that I experienced, and there were ways that it was much worse than a flu, and there were ways that it was much easier than a flu. I want to inject a little bit of realism into the conversation and acknowledge the suffering that you will be going through instead of kind of trying to sweep it under the rug and keep you positive for positivity's sake, which kind of leads into the next helpful tool, which these are kind of mindset tools now. Mindset is basically the biggest part of this video that I want to share. How you deal with the treatment, it plays a really big role in the pain and the suffering and the recovery. I am relatively young, but I was able to recover 2 weeks faster. My blood work came back 2 weeks faster than was charted. And I do think a lot of it had to do with my support system um, and the mindset approaches that I took to dealing with the treatment, chemotherapy. You know, there's an interesting thing that happens when getting diagnosed, getting sick, or facing some sort of calamity in your life. Kind of the veil gets thin between the visible and the invisible. Relationship with God certainly is probably the biggest thing that helped me through. But even if you don't want to pick a denomination or like acknowledge a God, there is certainly something bigger in terms of like community and the relationships and the emotions that are collectively felt. They're bigger than you are. And if you can plug into these bigger things, it really does seem to cultivate a strategic optimism, which I think is worth employing. These are some of the mindset practices and approaches that I used to help me get through treatment and the bone marrow transplant. I had cancer and I had tumors in my chest. And not thinking about those tumors in my chest was rare unless that I kind of got myself out of that mindset. The stories, the worries, etc. Prayer was like a way to reorientate myself to all the 99% of my body that was healthy. There was really only like 1 to 3% of my body that was affected, 1 to 3% of my body that was physically radical, that had these growths, and they would be the 100% of what I focused on. Prayer helped me orientate to the massive amount of ability and health that I still had and vitality I still had in my body. And prayer is like gratitude. Every prayer that I kind of start with is a thank you, more or less. Um, and then to get specific about my practice, it was really just cultivating a relationship with God, with that which is bigger, to the great mystery, to a loving and eternally understanding force that I don't quite comprehend. So the relationship runs deep, and there's no over praying or getting a little more out of the box. I did tone and I did chant and I did use singing. There really, really, truly is something about making sounds. A lot of times the anxiety and the discomfort, it gets like stuck. There's a book called The Body Keeps Score, which talks about how trauma can get stuck in the body if it's not released. I felt that, but making noise, toning, it's so underrated. I there's a even from the psychological, like not feeling kind of seen, not feeling heard. Nurses kind of don't even talk, or unless you engage with them, they don't kind of ask you how you're doing. They have to ask you how you're doing, but it feels very sterile, not very heart centric. And I'm not blaming them. They interact with 1,000 miserable people a year. So there's definitely a fatigue involved, but expressing yourself. I had my illness actually resided in my throat and in my chest, and I feel how humming or toning into that area would kind of relax the area. There's something to toning that helps relax the system. There's something to toning that helps kind of express without having to find the words. And another way to do this is singing. Singing is so great. And maybe even singing a cappella without the music so you can kind of hear yourself, flaws and all. There's really something beautiful to toning, chanting, and singing. So my morning routine, when I'd wake up, would be to do breathing techniques. I would follow that by toning, humming, and that would relax my body. And I would sit and just in stillness, in meditation. And then I would end my meditation with prayer, with a conversation with the greatest good, with God. And this would be my morning routine every day before going into treatment at 9 a.m. and beginning that process. And I really do recommend both prayer and some sort of singing, some sort of noise making. Dancing is next. And I want to say movement. While you can move, while you can get your endorphins up, while you can sweat, I basically living living the way you ought to be living every day, in terms of like maximizing your capacity for health. This is how I try to approach chemotherapy. This is how I try to approach recovery. It was kind of like the kick in the butt to do all the things that I've been meaning to do: meditation, prayer. I really I exercised a lot leading up to it, so exercising, like all these things that kind of like help regulate my nervous system, which is the big key here, which got my body feeling limber and good. I mean, there's a lot of laying in bed. There's a lot of sitting in chairs. There's a lot of tiredness. There's a lot of rest. So anything you can do to mitigate the auxiliary pains that you have from that is super important. I mean, there were days where I would do chair yoga, and it was similar to like rotating so gently because my body would be talking and pain would happen, and just moving slowly through that pain, moving the body in ways that it was being stagnant. Chemotherapy gets put through the bloodstream, so any stagnant, your blood is fluid. So if it stagnates, I'm trying to clear the chemotherapy out best I can to help with the recovery. So movement is critical. Bending over, touching your toes if you can do that. If you can't, sitting in a chair and bending over and putting your forehead towards your knees. Things like this. Even if you can, I was playing basketball the first 10 days of the bone marrow transplant. I was so thankful that I got to go outside and there was a basketball court, so I wasn't this really helped my mental. It was almost something I looked forward to during treatment, that I would go after treatment every single day to the basketball courts, and it was something I looked forward to, and it was something that actually helped me connect with community because I would videotape myself playing basketball and I'd post that as opposed to posting kind of like the nitty gritty, and a lot of people responded positively to that. But just any type of movement that you're comfortable with doing. As far as sweating, I know with the port or the Hickman line that you're gonna get, they do discourage sweating too much, but you're probably not gonna be drenched in sweat. You'll probably do something moderate to light. Yoga and Qigong is something that I was using too, and you can do an entire Qigong series, which is basically slow movement coupled with breathing, standing. There's a complete standing series, so you never even have to get down to the ground. There is no squats, there is nothing intense. But Qigong is something that I would recommend. Yoga, if possible, if you can get down on the ground, if you can get yourself back up. Yoga was super helpful, and then even some light, walking and jogging or basketball like I did. Or the next things I want to talk about are how to cultivate mindset. Maybe I'll just go through all these and then maybe I'll circle back and try to break them down. But I wrote here for cultivating mindset, community, asking for help, surrender, giving one's life to God, focus and attention, forgiveness, leveraging the placebo effect, strategic optimism, which is something I mentioned earlier, finding a way to giving, creating something to share, and something maybe not to share, but creating something. Exercise, which I talked about, managing my pride, autonomy, saying yes, saying no, particularly in a hospital setting where you feel like they have an authority. If you're someone that complies often or has high in agreeableness, you might say yes to everything, but you might truly mean no. And having the autonomy to say no, super important. And the last thing, maybe which I should have started with, is asking yourself the question, do you want to be alive? And I think maybe that's a good place to start with the mindset. When I got sick, I made an appointment with a psychologist and holistic healthcare professional. And the first thing they asked me was, do you actually want to be alive? When I told them that I got sick. And I was like a little offended and a bit stunned. Like, of course, that's why I'm here on this call. But it was one of those things that they said, and then it stuck with me for, well, even till now, but it stuck with me for days. It would kind of be in my mind. And it really brought to the surface all the ways that, I mean, all the actions that I was taking, which kind of said no to that question. Like, there were a lot of instances through action, if I was being honest with myself, that I wasn't showing the world, I wasn't showing God, I wasn't showing myself that I actually wanted to be alive, which was pretty sad. Um, but it gave me the opportunity to start kind of looking at the actions that someone that did want to be alive would take, and how to do that myself. And it was a question that really kind of reframed my mind, um, to start to create a life worth living. And basically, that's the key to pulling yourself through the suffering. Um, a good why can bear almost any how, is a saying. And cultivating that sense of like, I do want to be, I'm so thankful to be here. I mean, I'm so thankful to be able-bodied. I'm so thankful for my family, whatever it is for you, the place I live, the community, the yoga class. I'm so thankful for the ability to see beautiful people, the so the potential to travel and try new foods. Like, there's so many good reasons to be alive, and reminding yourself of that, particularly when you might want a way out, in terms of being afraid of the treatment or afraid of the suffering that you're going to endure. It's a really strong question to ask yourself. Going in reverse order here, the autonomy. Again, hospitals, they will give you, every one of their solutions will be pill or surgery orientated. A pill includes ointments, that will be pharmacological. And they will assume that you will say yes to everything. They do the thing where they place themselves in an authoritarian position and they tell you what to do, and they assume that you'll kind of follow suit. And some hospitals, if you do say no to something, they'll even threaten to take away your treatment. They'll even threaten to kind of make your time a little bit less comfortable. There was uh, I did an inpatient 4.5, 5 days of chemo. And one night I refused fluids. While you're in the hospital, they are pumping you with saline. And by day 4, getting up to use the restroom was uncomfortable sometimes. And there was a sense that I experienced one time during treatment where I couldn't stop going to the bathroom. I felt like I always had to go to the bathroom. And so a nurse came in to change the fluids, and I said, I don't want any more fluids. This was like after 4 days of getting fluids straight, all billable. And she's like, you have to. I was like, no, I don't. And I don't want any more fluids. Well, why not? Well, because X, Y, and Z. Furthermore, I don't need to explain to you why I don't want more like a substance into my body. This is my body. And unfortunately, you have to remind these healthcare professionals about that sometimes. And so I denied the fluid. She finally conceded. And the next day, a doctor came into my room after I hadn't seen a doctor for the previous days. And they basically gave me a talking to about how I have to comply. And then they went further on, where I had to interview with a social worker, whether or not I was worthy to receive the bone marrow transplant. So they were going to withhold further treatment, the cure to the particular cancer that I had, all for denying fluids, which were bringing me great misery in terms of the discomfort it was bringing to me at the time. Fluids that were unnecessary, and I know that because they initially told me when I was going through that treatment that it would be outpatient. And if it was outpatient, I would only be receiving fluids for 4 hours a day. So I was receiving fluids for 24 hours a day for 4 days straight. I denied it because of the urinary like things I was experiencing at that time. And their response to that was, do what you're told or you won't be getting treatment. That felt super rude and inconsiderate and all the things. But I was glad to maintain the autonomy. And actually, everything worked out. I actually found a different hospital to have the bone marrow transplant, a hospital which I was able to do outpatient bone marrow transplant. That's how I got to go outside. That's how I got to play basketball. That's how I got to see the sun. Some hospitals, some bone marrow transplant, they keep you in hospital. You don't get to go outside. You're always hooked up to an IV tower. And they even told me that I would have an alarm put on my bed that I couldn't get up without a nurse's permission to use the restroom for my own safety. So to go from a place that was basically going to make me a prisoner, a medical prisoner, uh, sticking to my autonomy, saying no when I meant it, when I felt it, truly. I mean, this was also after 100 yeses, and I say no to extra fluids, an extra bag of fluids, and they say they're going to take away my ability to get treated. You know your body. These people have seen 100 cases, and they will try to logically dominate you. Please, please, please trust yourself. Please trust your no. The only thing tricky with that is sometimes I want to say no to treatment because I know the suffering it's going to bring me. I did go through all the treatment, but the prophylactic things, the things that they give you just in case because they don't want things to get worse, these are some opportunities to think about your decisions. Really. Because every prophylactic medication is given out of fear. Every single one is given because they're afraid that X could happen. They're afraid that Y could happen. Every single one. Prophylactic is not to deal with what you're experiencing. It's to protect you from what could happen. So you have to really, really think about, I mean, it's your opportunity to really think about what you want to put into yourself. Where your line is, where your autonomy is. Not just saying no for the sake of no, although if you have to do that for your mindset, go for it. It's saying no because your body's like, this doesn't feel risky as they're making it seem. They're selling this with so much fear, and you know what? I'm actually not afraid of this. Uh, or I'm willing. You know, I've been through some shit now, so I'm willing to face whatever does come of this. Um, and I didn't say no to every prophylactic thing, but I did say no to a fair share, and I'm glad I did. In some ways, managing my pride, I kind of just touched on inadvertently. Um, yeah. Uh, uh, Exercising, I talked about already. Creating something to share and sharing and creating something not to share, perhaps, and reaching out. And we can even loop in community asking for help into this one. There, particularly amongst men, suffering in silence is glorified. And and don't worry, even if you ask for help and even if you get help, there will be plenty of suffering that no one understands. There will be plenty of pain that no one can understand, and you will be suffering in silence, alone at times, whether you ask for help or not. And the guys who proudly say to keep your problems to yourself, that's a weak mindset. That's a weak and egocentric mindset. And I understand not wanting to appear vulnerable, and I do understand being perceived as weak and the vulnerability that comes with that. But the most rewarding thing I did, and one of the best things that I did for my mental space was sharing um, what I was about to embark on in terms of treatment and asking for help in a specific way that people knew what to actually do. When I shared what I was undergoing, I was very, very cautious to not share from a place of victimhood. I was very much trying to share as this matter of fact, sticking to the facts. I'm about to undergo a bone marrow transplant. I'm about to undergo chemotherapy. Um, and then following that up with, um, but this is my journey and I'm willing to walk the path and I'm willing to do what it takes to be healthy and to stay alive. You know, so sharing from a place of actuality, what's actually going to happen. Um, but then for your own sake, not, maintaining your hero in your journey, yourself as a hero, not conceding to victimhood. And that will help ward off the perceptions, the negative perceptions you're afraid of from sharing in the first place. You're afraid to share because you're afraid to look like a victim. But it's not the things that happen to us or what we have to endure that makes us the victim. It's how we respond to those things, um, and then what they do to us and what people see what they do to us. And there are my mom, my partner, my family, being extremely vulnerable with those people when I needed to or when I didn't, it just happened. The times I've had to weep alone, but also with others. Um, Asking for help is so underrated, and it could be my perspective as a man. But I hope if you're a man watching this, um, you're encouraged to not be afraid to ask for help, to not be afraid to share what you're about to embark on, and to not be afraid to go on the journey, to walk your path that God has planned for you, or that is planned for you, or that you're going to walk. Um, I asked for, I'd been out of work for, I had to be out of work for 4 months. So, and I have an infant. And so I did ask for financial help, which was extremely difficult. Talk about the pride, talk about the ego. And I was completely floored by the response. So I did, to take a little bit of credit, even though there is none truly to take. I did cultivate a community, and I have supported a community and built a community, and have shown up for other people. Um, but how people have showed up for me with food, with phone calls, with art, with money has just been like above and beyond. So, and that was all predicated on asking for help when I truly needed it. And I really encourage you to do the same. When I received the messages, when I received the artwork, when I received the money, and I'm in a hospital bed, the last thing I want to worry about is paying my rent, paying my medical deductible, and childcare costs and all that associated. So it was asking for help is absolutely huge. I really want to put a highlighter on it, and then doing it in a way um, which doesn't necessarily, uh, doing it in a way that doesn't necessarily convey the fear that you might be feeling, although that if it's authentic, why not? And then doing it in a way where you're not the victim, where you're taking as much responsibility as you're able to take for walking your path, which ultimately you're going to have to do anyway. You're going to have to walk the path alone. You're going to be the one receiving treatment. You're going to be the one feeling the sensations of treatment and recovery. Um, so it's kind of just accepting the truth of the situation. Conveying that truth is super powerful, and people will respond to that. And yeah, ask for help. Surrender and giving life to God. Gosh, I mean, if there is one thing that treatment, that all of this has done for me mentally, It has massive reps, it's been a massive exercise in surrendering my anxieties and fears and returning to the present moment. It, oh my gosh, the days leading up to treatment, the days leading up to a bone marrow transplant where you're told all sorts of things, and the 6 days in a row of chemotherapy, 3 weeks, 4 weeks of recovery, 6 months of isolation. This is all the things they tell you. It's you're not, sometimes they told me I won't be able to drive, I won't be able to X, Y, Z. The anxieties of that is unbearable. Like if you get caught in your head, if you get caught in the thoughts of the future, it's no place to live. Surrendering my life, in my case, to God, giving my life, which ultimately was given to me by God. It is God's life. If there is a creator, the creator of everything, the creator of my life, the creator of life as I know it, it is his life. And it's to serve that loving force, that loving creative force as to the best of my ability. And if this is my path, accepting that path, which is a form of surrender, not trying to fight. And I did look, there were days where I looked for anything, any other way to take care of this cancer besides chemotherapy. And there's a million people that tell you all sorts of ways to treat it. I mean, fasting, and I did a lot of these things. Fasting, vitamins, juice, drinking cow's blood, like extracted from their udder, like cannabis, so many things, so many things. I fasted for 9 days, and some of it may have some value, some of it had some value, but as someone with a curable cancer, um, I decided to go the allopathic route as it gave me the best chance to continue my life with a son, with a newborn baby who I want to be with all the time. So, um, so surrendering to the will of God, giving my anxieties actively through prayer to God was, I was going to say a daily practice. It was probably a tri-daily practice. It was probably 3 to 10 times a day, reminding myself to give the worry in my heart to that which can bear it, to that which is bigger, to that which knows, to that which is greater. And if I'm losing you because you don't subscribe to a force or a thought like that, there's a way to relax the body physically, and there's a way to cultivate a mindset of giving away your fears to the external, that can bring you peace. And if you can bring peace to yourself in these trying moments, I believe you can affect your recovery in a positive way. And that's the point, is to allow your body to recover and to regenerate. And we do that by regulating our nervous system, relaxing the body, and truly giving away the worries and the anxieties. Focus and attention, forgiveness. While suffering, there's a sensitivity that occurs, and it's almost beautiful in this kind of twisted way. How sensitive I became to not just the physical stuff, but also to emotional, empathetic events around me. By understanding the depth of suffering I can endure, it kind of connected me to those who are also going through trying times, through empathy. And forgiveness seems to be I mean, it's such a powerful force for like healing myself. And if I can heal my mind, you know, if there's ways to cultivate health of my mind, I there it feels entirely connected to the physical, my ability to heal myself physically. And forgiveness seems to be the most worthwhile practice in terms of like there's in a lifetime there's a million things to forgive. And it's so easy to become the judge of the experience in your life, but it's way harder. It's so much more difficult to judge all the things and all the people that wronged you. And like forgiveness is one of those things where you're giving up nothing for everything, but the nothing feels like everything. Forgiveness is literally like remembering like that there's light outside after being in like a dungeon of your own making. It's so crazy how good it feels and how much resistance there is around it. Like even to people that have completely like like hurt me, and like people that will never apologize to me, definitely, but like just hurt, and I have all the reasons to never forgive them, you know. Um, but in this like vulnerable place where I kind of had the ability, this superpower of empathy, um, like there was forgiveness available for like like old parents, siblings, fights that I got in like so many things. And like each one, like the process of kind of like feeling it, but then like begrudgingly like forgiving the person at first, but then kind of just letting them, actually seeing them in peace, actually seeing the enemy in happiness and in love. Um, it was like there's like a physical thing to it, like a physical release. So if you can find a way to forgive yourself, oh my God, I've left out forgiving myself. I mean, I don't know why I got cancer. The why is still a mystery. It can be a myriad of things. Um, but my own actions leading up to getting sick certainly are involved into why I got sick. And whatever those actions are, mental action, like thought patterns, physical actions, what have you, forgiving myself, holy crap. I mean, that's the big one. Forgiveness of myself. And I'm sure I'm still working on it, positive, but like every time I do get some work done in that area, there's a positive physical benefit. Finding a way to give, even when I'm in a bad, terrible place, like giving to others, finding a way to give. And I mean, it's been like giving my community, like cleaning up the park after like people left like food from a party, like all over the picnic table. It makes me feel good. Like it somehow makes me feel good, even though I'm like picking up dirty tinfoils and stuff like that, like leftover plates with like ketchup and stuff. It could be giving a smile, which is kind of lame and not something I do that much, but I have, and it feels good. It can be giving, asking someone how they're doing, even though you're the one going through it. Not becoming so self-absorbed is definitely a challenge because when in pain, it's almost impossible to not be self-absorbed. So if you're in constant kind of state of like suffering or discomfort, the trap of being completely self-absorbed is ready and available. Um, it's almost a blessing to be going through so much suffering because a lot of people they walk around with this like dull suffering that they received as a child, like like uh, I don't want to say anything specific, but people have childhood traumas that are like, okay, they didn't get, they're still very able-bodied and they're still extremely blessed, but they have this thing which like they walk around completely self-absorbed because they had to, that's how they dealt with the trauma or whatever. Being excluded from a party in high school, being picked last on the whatever, your parents telling you you can be more athletic, whatever, these little micro things that stick around and linger, they like can really justify a complete, in fact, like a complete self-absorption, whereas these like massive sufferings, they kind of can like release you from being so self-absorbed because you kind of have the superpower of empathy. You can like tap into other people's feelings, and it's like, okay, um I can break free of this like incessant like this need to just be self-obsessed. Giving. um I do want to add one other thing in fasting. I did There were times in my treatment where my PET scan kept coming back uh, with like tumor, like things that were lighting up on the PET scan, and they were unsure of what it was without a biopsy. And they kept wanting to give me treatment. They kept wanting to give me immunotherapy or more chemo. They like recommend, well, we'll give you more chemo, and then you can do your bone marrow transplant. And this went on for like months, where they said I was going to get a bone marrow transplant in August, and then they kept recommending immunotherapy and chemotherapy, and my PET scan wasn't getting any better. In fact, there was markers showing up on it. And they even said, they're like, well, it could be just inflammation. But just in case, we should do chemotherapy. That's their thought. That's the hospital's thought. Well, just in case, we should do a $50,000 billable event on you, instead of, if it's inflammation, maybe approaching it in an anti-inflammatory way, diet, exercise, etc. So I did, because there was this kind of lull in the treatment where this persistent thing that kept showing up on my PET scan. I'm like, okay, if it's inflammation, I'm going to do the most anti-inflammatory thing possible. I'm going to fast. I did a lot of research on it. I've done it previously. I've done fasts before. So I did, what was it, 8 days. I was really trying to do a 14-day. That was the goal. Um, but I ended up doing an 8-day fast. And then I ate for a couple days, and then I did another 3-day fast leading up to a PET scan. And previous two PET scans that kept showing, lighting up with possible cancer, it was all gone. And they're like, oh my God, that's amazing. That's so unusual. How did you do that? And I told them, and they didn't care. It's not something that they'll recommend to other people. But if you are going through this, if you're undergoing cancer, and perhaps there's something persistent, or if you want to get a jump on it, if you want to reduce the inflammation in your body, you want to give yourself the best chance of recovering and allowing the body to do what it naturally can do, which is heal, recover, create homeostasis. Fasting might be a really great option. There's plenty of research on it now, so please don't take my word for it. I just used it, and it did help me throughout this process. During the bone marrow transplant, I also fasted. That was kind of not on purpose. There was a part of the bone marrow transplant where any food I took in, I would like pay a consequence for. I would have really painful stomach cramps and diarrhea. Um, and so eating wasn't worth it. So I did fast for like 3 or 4 days during the bone marrow transplant as well. But I did an intentional fast leading up to it, and it did pay off in terms of it produced a clean PET scan, which I needed in order to go into the bone marrow transplant. So I they recommended more chemotherapy and a different kind of it was going to be like my 9th chemotherapy, and I was like, I'm trying this. I'm reclaiming my autonomy. I'm reclaiming this power, and I'm just going to try to heal myself. And I did that in various other ways, before even ever trying chemotherapy, and inevitably my journey took me to the chemotherapy route. But maybe it would be enough for you if you have a little health scare to fast. Again, anything to regulate your nervous system, anything to bring relaxation into the body, and you might be thinking, "Oh, isn't fasting stressful?" And it's not. It is stressful at first, the first maybe day or two when you have hunger signals and like your natural reaction is to go figure it out, go hunt. But um, there is a super evening out process, and your brain becomes much calmer, much more present when you're fat in a fasted state. It could be ketosis or something, but um, my nervous system it's super regulated when fasting. And I've only gone, I think my longest was 9 days or 8 days. Um, Around like day 3 or 4, you do feel a supreme sense of calm that comes from fasting. And I did drink water, and I did drink water that had salt in it, electrolytes that had no calories. But that was it. That was all I drank. Um, the last one is probably the most weird. But as a man, I did retain my semen as well throughout the course of the bone marrow transplant. Now, I was worried that I wouldn't. I mean, they make you sign a document saying that you might not be able to reproduce, and I don't know if I can reproduce or whatever, but there were definitely days where I questioned one of the anxieties or fears that came up. Will I have a usable penis? Sorry for cursing. But I didn't know if I was going to be able to, like, again, I didn't know anything. Surrender, massive surrender. Any thought of the future was unknown. So I didn't know. Um, so like it wasn't a challenge to retain because nothing was moving down there anyway. But there were days where it started to come back. The blood flow returned, and retaining before, leading up to it, and then for weeks afterwards during the recovery, um, I do think it did help. At least not consuming like porn or anything that kind of like brought my energy down, brought my vibe down. I think that helped. And then retaining, it could just be strategic optimism, but or like leveraging the placebo effect, because I believe that retaining semen kind of boosts my energy, bounces my chi. So therefore, you know, if you do have a belief about something, leverage that. And that's actually how we should end this thing, is leveraging the placebo effect and employing strategic optimism. It's like if you believe something will contribute to your health and you answer the question, and your answer to the question, do you want to be alive, is yes, then do that thing, particularly when undergoing treatment, particularly when you have all the reasons in the world and all the motivation to get healthy. Do the thing you believe will make you healthy. If you believe that negatively charged ion water, if you believe that swirling your water in a spiral is going to give you water that replenishes your body, if you believe in putting a filter on your shower, if maybe this can get I can see how this can teeter-totter into the world of obsessive compulsive disorder. Like, does touching your doorknob 3 times is that going to bring you health? It's a balance, right? Leverage the placebo effect, but also be grounded in like where you're willing to give your beliefs. Um, and you might be saying, well, praying and believing in a God that is invisible is not very logical. But God is to be experienced through the heart, and it's definitely not understood through the mind, not through my human brain. And through my experiences of the heart, I have the evidence that is required to believe in something greater, to believe in something that is loving, a loving force of creation. And that is truly the place where optimism comes from. That is the place where surrender belongs, surrendering those anxieties and those worries and the fears about the future, and surrendering my life, which included accepting the potential to pass, to die. It's a memento mori moment for sure. And remembering that this could take my life, remembering that this could claim me. Um, that is an exercise that I've had to do a few times over these past few years, many times. And it all kind of leads to a place of surrender and to unknowing and to giving my life back to God, that loving creative force that I've experienced through my heart. I really hope this helps. I know it was super long, and my intention is this a way to give back and to give to those who have to experience what I've also had to experience. Yeah, maybe share this if you know anyone going through chemotherapy or specifically a bone marrow transplant. I think this could be helpful. I hope this is helpful. I think this could be helpful. So be well. If you want to reach out, I am findable through Instagram, TikTok, places like this, YouTube. Pretty good at responding to comments. And if you have any questions or if you want to share your experience, please do so. Please do so by commenting below. And wishing you health, happiness, and strength on your journey. You can do it, and you will. Glory to God, and peace to his people on earth.